Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on Episode 3 of The Familiar of Zero, Night of the Twin Moons. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. So last we left off, Prince Wales is dead for real. It's not good. Princess Henrietta is likely not doing too well. Although it seems like everyone else is doing poorly too, because it would seem everyone's shipping off to the army, you know. Like, Geisha's certainly doing it, but I guess everyone else has kind of been drafted as well, and Geisha, at the very least, is putting up a brave front. You know, we know this isn't necessarily the truth of the matter, but, you know, he's doing it nonetheless, probably out of obligation. It is sort of touching that Montmorency seems to care, but, yeah. Not good, really, because she does have a tendency to be ambivalent towards him, but yeah. So it is, perhaps deeply unfortunate that everyone's being drafted and sent to fight in Albion. It's even worse that Saito draws a technically correct but morally wrong conclusion that, you know, oh, I'm the only boy at this academy now. And it's like, look, Louise isn't gonna thank you for that, dude. Although that said, you know, it seems as though life is swiftly endeavoring to make Saito wrong by introducing another male character, and if memory serves, one who stacks up rather impressively compared to him. Now, the thing is, if memory serves, this guy didn't show up until later. Much later, I thought, but, you know, evidently I'm wrong. So the real question, I guess, is what do we learn about this guy up front? Like, obviously, aside from the fact that he's kind of like a smarmy, self-confident type of guy. Now, normally during the opening theme, I would sit quietly with reverence, but today I am obligated to my sponsor. Today's sponsor is none other than myself. You may not know this, but I write light novels, and I've written quite a few. Today, I'm going to tell you about the eccentric detective Yamamoto, in which the intrepid, if drunken, detective solves a wide variety of cases with the help of her assistant Satoshi. Ranging from finding missing pets and surveilling cheating spouses to catching a high-end cat burglar and preventing the murder of a local business magnate, no case is too big or too small for Detective Yamamoto. Even when she's forced to work with, and occasionally against, the police, and even when she must contend with her fear of the supernatural, nothing will prevent the eccentric detective from doing what needs to be done to solve the case. If this sounds like something you'd like to read, then by all means, consider purchasing books in the Eccentric Detective Yamamoto series by me, Frederick Fitzgerald, through Amazon. Thank you very much for your time, and enjoy the episode. Now, the interesting thing is that this Giulio character, he claimed he was from Romalia. Now, I don't know why I've said that, like, we have no reason to doubt him, but the question is he an Italian or is he from the Vatican? And I guess with a title like Sword of the Holy Man, I feel like it's pretty safe to say that he's like from the Vatican. But that brings up all sorts of other questions here, because that implies there's a pope, or, you know, a Catholic church, something like that going on here. And also, I don't know, I guess my grasp of history isn't super strong. I don't know if Italy was a unified country at this point in time, in pre-revolutionary France, roughly speaking. You know, for a while it was like a bunch of city-states, and, you know, the Pope had holdings there and all sorts of stuff, but, I guess it remains to be seen. Now, Agnes has seen fit to interrupt a lesson here. The interesting thing is that Professor Colbert remains as a teacher at the academy. I would think if all the students are being drafted, he likely would as well, given that he appears to be relatively young. You know, he's not elderly like the headmaster. However, Oh dear. So Colbert is countermanding Agnes here. Agnes is of the opinion that the students here should learn the art of war, whereas the professor would rather have them continue with their studies. And, ooh. You know, I'm not sure I agree with Colbert here. He's saying that war is foolish, but, you know, that might well be true. War not being a good thing in and of itself, but, you know, if war is being declared on you and you're being attacked, you don't really have the luxury to, cry about how silly war is, nor can you ignore the realities of war encroaching upon you. So, you know, Agnes might well be correct here that if this academy is to be a target or otherwise, you know, on the battlefield here, it would behoove the students to be able to at least defend themselves. Now, what form that self-defense will take remains to be seen, because I feel like if it's anything martial related, which I guess it is, boy, Louise is gonna wash out of this. It's like, I get it, you should have, like, some small degree of martial understanding, but, I mean, surely, if you have a mage, then a mage should be more competent in using magic, right? Like, you do have to have some idea of self-defense, but at the same time, it should be self-defense pertaining to, like, the tools you use day to day. Like, I feel like Agnes just sort of twisting Montmorency's arm behind her back like that, like, that's kind of a cheap thing, because, like, a quarterstaff isn't going to help you in that situation. You know, surely you'd be better off learning how to grapple and how to get out of stuff like that, rather than saying, alright guys, we're going to swing a stick around. Yeah, it's just this odd situation where everyone is sort of right for the wrong reasons. Because, like, yeah, the mages should learn self-defense, but, you know, maybe learning how to use a polearm isn't the right thing for a mage, just because they're not gonna get the best use out of it. So unfortunately, with all the men having been drafted, the dynamics have shifted. You know, this Giulio character is one of two men, and really when you get down to it, he's the only uninvolved man. So, naturally, all the women would be flocking to him, but unfortunately, he has seen fit to, ignore all the other women in favor of Louise, which, you know, there's something to be said for that. You know, perhaps, he has a type. Perhaps he has a discerning eye for, magical characteristics. But the big important thing here is that, this is really only going to, inflame relations between parties here, because Saito's not going to thank the guy for sticking his oar in, but at the same time, he's not exactly, of equal status, shall we say. You know, being a familiar sort of puts him on a low rung on the ladder, so to speak, and, you know, if Giulio's shown up here at this academy, he's got to be aristocratic or at least of similar stature. You know, like, no one's really outright said it, but it seems as though that he's sort of, related to the Vatican, probably in some important way. Now, I can't help but wonder why Saito ran afoul of this, musketeer here. Because on the one hand, you know, by all accounts, he should have been able to trounce her, so I'm wondering if it was just an unwillingness to fight, or if it was because, a wooden sword doesn't provoke the magic. I feel like it was probably the latter, you know? So, just like all the mages have made the mistake of saying, we need our wands and all that, Saito is making the mistake of saying, I need my sword, and that's not strictly true. I feel like he really only needs a sword. You know, like an actual sword intended to be a weapon, which a wooden sword wouldn't be. So it's sort of an unforced error that he's, like, admitting to all this when it's only going to land him more work. Now, I do find it interesting because I was sort of picturing this as parallel to his fight with Guiche. You know, rather than issuing a challenge, Giulio approached Saito and said, like, hey, you want to spar? And, you know, sure, he added conditions on top of that, but, it's sort of a reversal of what I expected. Now, of course, the question is, what's Giulio playing at here? Because he's having Louise wager a kiss, So obviously he's in it for that, but I don't know. There's got to be something else here, because like when you just sort of take an aggregate of everyone's opinions on Louise, you know, she's not exactly in high demand, I guess. So again, Louise is I think correct here. You know, now's not the time to be causing trouble, and like, you know, sure, you could spar and all that, but like, spar, right? Like, don't actually cause trouble. Saito seems intent on causing trouble. You know, he's agreed not to use a real sword, but at the same time, this opens up the possibility that he just has no skill whatsoever. And, I don't know, considering that there is a wager here, it's, not exactly smart on his part. Like, I guess it's sort of along the lines of him challenging Guiche in that he's more concerned with pride and things like that than, you know, whether or not this is a rational good thing to do. Now, at least he has the good sense to talk to Agnes and say, like, okay, yeah, you know, you're right, like, I am sort of useless without a proper weapon, so would you mind training me? I do think it's interesting that he really just sort of stops short of explaining everything, but at least he gets to the salient point that, like, you know, I do need a weapon to be useful. I want to be useful even without one. You know, fair play to him, because that's at least, like, the noble position to have, that, you know, he should be useful. Okay, so I guess he was kind of burying the lead a little bit, that, like, yes, he wants to be useful, yes, he wants to protect Louise, he also does want to beat Giulio in that duel, which, you know, I feel like I can't exactly blame the guy for that. At least he was honest, but at the same time, that's not exactly the best way to win Agnes over. So I guess the question is, you know, they're training late in the evening for a duel the following morning. How badly is Agnes gonna beat him from now until then? And, you know, will he be in any condition to really fight? Now, of course, it wouldn't be the familiar of Zero without a little bit of a misunderstanding. You know, Saito didn't tell Louise what he's getting up to, and naturally, when she runs into Siesta, she assumes that the maid's hiding something, which, you know, she well and truly isn't this time. I guess the question is, what's Louise gonna think when she invariably stumbles across this? Cause, you know, Saito is showing little bits of improvement, but he's still being thrashed by and large. You know, I feel like Louise probably won't take too kindly to Agnes beating her familiar, even if it is ultimately for a good purpose. Oh, wow. So I guess Louise is going all over asking everyone. I guess in hindsight, it's kind of sad that she went to Siesta first, assuming the maid is hiding something. I guess it does kind of make sense, but going to Kirsch doesn't exactly help either, given her description of events. You know, they are broadly true, but also misleading, and I mean, Louise is generally the type to blast first and ask questions later, so, however battered Saito is, it's about to get worse. Now, Saito, he's playing a silly game here. You know, Agnes mentioned she's none too keen on mages who wield fire, so Saito's asking about it. Obviously, there's something, not good, but, on the one hand, it is something you should do in a fight, try and get under your opponent's skin, but on the other hand, maybe not with the musketeer. And also, circumstances have conspired to make Saito appear to be the villain once again. Man. I can't help but wonder how Louise could get away with catching Agnes in that explosion. Surely she would have been, but, man. It's never a dull moment for Saito, and rarely is that a good thing. You know, I feel like the poor guy could go for a little more boredom in his life. So speaking of people getting under others' skin, you know, Julio has Saito nailed. It's like, you look like you've been beaten up by a dragon all night out of jealousy. And in a way, he is sort of correct. Yeah, so it's bad. Julio knows exactly what buttons to push, and Saito, he doesn't have the presence of mind to ignore all that stuff. And to be fair, I can't say I blame him. I would probably be upset at the same sort of stuff. But, I don't know, man. He's just gonna have to find a way around it, I suppose, if he wants to win, because, there is a kiss on the line here. That's no small thing. So, that's slightly unfortunate. Montmorency's cheering for Saito, but it's sort of out of selfish interest, She doesn't want Julio to kiss Louise, not because she really roots for Saito or anything, but I guess just because she has the hots for this Italian. And, man, Guy should be heartbroken to hear that, I reckon. Yeah, so Derflinger, unfortunately, is like the real voice of reason here. It's like, wow, Saito's not doing half bad. But at the same time, there's no way he's gonna win this. And, that's probably true. I feel like, really, Saito's only chance is to, do something underhanded, It's not exactly sporting or anything, but, I guess when it comes down to it, sporting doesn't matter in combat. You win or you lose, and that's the only thing that makes the difference. Whoa, buddy. So Julio, he's mastered an advanced technique for getting in someone's head, and unfortunately for Saito, it seems to have worked. Oh, I take that back. I got fooled. Well, I guess everything is stupendously backfired. Saito, I guess, out of mortal terror, managed to survive. So, the question is, what now? Something tells me Louise might welch on the bet, but, I guess it can't be helped, I guess everything's made worse by Derflinger bringing it up, saying hey, Saito won, hold up your end of the bargain. But, man. Oh, no. So Saito, I think he's done the worst possible thing. Because, taking a little kiss, even if out of, pity or happenstance, that's something. That's not bad. But for Saito to say, no, I don't want the kiss, that's not good, At least he tempers it by saying, I didn't win, that guy lost on purpose. And, that might well be true, but, I don't know. It isn't good optically to sort of refuse the thing you won in front of a crowd, Of course, I reckon no one's gonna get to the bottom of this because Louise has been called by her special code name that, the princess has for her, so no doubt things are about to get dangerous again in short order. It seems that everything's just going to be real bumpy going forward, because not only has Saito and Louise been called to do something by the princess, but they're going to be working with Julio. And Julio did this whole thing to, assess things. Not necessarily to cause trouble, but to, figure out how much of a burden Saito could possibly be. Oh dear. So I guess Louise still isn't over all that monkey business with the glasses, seeing as how she's reflexively apologizing for Saito's rudeness. I mean, at least, Princess Henrietta has a good head on her shoulders that, look, things were bad. That whole stuff with Prince Wales was, decidedly not good, and you knocked some sense into me, so, let's let bygones be bygones. It's remarkable that she's gotten over it so quickly, although maybe she is just sort of, putting up a brave front. 'Cause I've been thinking about it. I feel like Tristan couldn't exactly give Wales a state funeral and all that. Something that would have been warranted. given the war and everything going on. So, things are probably definitively suboptimal in a way that no one's really going to be happy with. So, interestingly, not only is Giulio joining with Saito and Louise, but Agnes is as well. So it really seems like the princess has sort of gone out of her way to gather the best and brightest she possibly can to handle whatever task she has in mind. It's probably not a good thing, come to think of it, if she has to gather everyone like this. At least she's unwilling to get the school further involved in war than strictly necessary. That's a good thing, I suppose, even if, half the student population's already been drafted. Oh dear. So, even though the princess isn't exactly divulging what she has him here for, Giulio's just intent on causing trouble. I get that he's Italian, but, maybe you could be a little less lascivious in hitting on taken women, Oh dear. Yeah, well, I guess we're not going to be getting a briefing then. Louise and Saito are too busy squabbling. Ooh. So this is something. Albion is decidedly upset given that they're spreading the word that good old Queen Henrietta executed Cromwell. Which, that isn't true. This Sheffield character was the one who did it, but, man. So I guess, a little bit of false flagging to bolster the war effort, I guess, Yeah, I highly doubt peace will come easily at this point. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.